Welcome back. Now, this week, President Cyril Ramaphosa hosted a two-day oversight Imbizo in Eastern Cape, along with members of the cabinet. The president chaired engagements between the national executive as well as the provincial counterparts. The Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs Minister Velinkosini Hlabisa labelled the province, the Eastern Cape, as the poorest or poor in the country, while the province is hailed as the fastest growing ports and automotive manufacturing industry. Premier Oscar Mabuyane has said poverty and unemployment continues to plague communities. Now, recently, the Auditor General's scathing report on the state of the province highlighted what was a bleak picture of the lack of accountability within the government. But why is the Eastern Cape continuously failing? Let's speak to Public Service Accountability Monitor Program Manager at Rhodes University Zukiswa Kota, who joins me now. Zukiswa, thank you so much for the time. Appreciated then this morning. What did you make of this visit? One could say that the issues in and around the Eastern Cape have actually been known for the longest time and nothing had been done previously. So what does this visit actually do?
Thanks, Sarabile. The visit is, from an oversight perspective, is an important one for what it signifies, or its symbolism from that perspective. But you're right, there are significant, deeply embedded problems and challenges from a socio-economic perspective in the Eastern Cape that haven't been adequately addressed for many, many years. So I think the questions are more about what are the objectives of the visit, and it's not just about a single visit, because no single visit would resolve these issues.
Is there perhaps a starting point then you feel could be at place then following this visit, which, as you said, is only one but should be one of many?
I think the starting point is, we at the Public Service Accountability Monitor have over several years looked quite closely at the provincial strategic plans, at provincial and departmental plans, essentially around a range of factors, including, aspects of fiscal management, aspects of development, aspects of education, and all the range of things that create growth, create development and progress in any context. And what we see really are repetitions of, on the one hand, recognition of the issues. So you're right, certainly none of these issues are novel, none of them are new. But by that same token, a simple failure to very often implement even the simplest of plans that are put in place. So the beginning point, we would argue, is to, first of all, determine, is it a leadership issue? And I think most of those questions have been answered. You referred to the AG's report. Year in, year out, the municipal audit outcomes and some of the special reports that the Auditor General's office issue indicate that at the core of it very often is leadership, not just in the Eastern Cape, of course, but certainly in the Eastern Cape and in particular at the municipal level, leadership is a fundamental problem. So that is a good starting point. And I think that's also where a lot of the politics and politicking lies, which is where the difficult decisions have to be made, must be made.
Is it time to reconfigure our strategic points that we find as very important, the areas in which government prioritizes? Because just last month, let's remember as well that President Cyril Ramaphosa had that state visit in and around Gauteng, illuminating the poor infrastructure, the poor state of Johannesburg in itself. The question mark is, how long does that take then to fix up? Because some say that because of the G20, things have been fixed in certain areas, but only along those significant routes. We need another sort of 2010 to come about, so to speak, and yet it's just not happening. Do we need to reprioritize?
Arguably, even in the context of big global events like the G20 visits, like the 2010 and World Cups and all kinds of global sporting events, those very often are about facelifts.
Yeah.
And I think we need much more than facelifts across the country. So certainly it is, I think it was right that people were upset and angry at the notion that the city of Johannesburg, for instance, would be given a bit of a facelift because leaders from across the world are coming. And so it's less about changing for those that live every day in these contexts, live in context of poor service delivery, no refuse collection, broken water pipes, no water delivery. And so I think it's the prioritization is certainly one aspect. But more than that, it is about what is it, who is held accountable when service delivery when services are not delivered. And that's really the big question. And now that we're seeing, for instance, I think water is a fundamental one. We're seeing the water infrastructure breakdown across the country. We're seeing failure to deliver a basic service like water in the biggest, metropolitan context in our country. And I think that also signals something deeply, deeply wrong in terms of, lack of accountability and lack of infrastructure, maintenance, for instance. So there is something on the one hand that is about, lack of accountable governance and leadership. There is also something to be said for a failure to plan ahead. So water infrastructure, we come back to that again. One of the things that the AG has pointed out in a special water report, for instance, is that many municipalities are simply not maintaining their infrastructure and are not planning ahead, are not budgeting adequately in order to maintain infrastructure into the long run. So there is a lot that we know is wrong. There are also what very often is referred to as the root causes. We know what those are in many instances, but it really boils down to a failure to respond on time, to respond adequately, and where there isn't a response for those who should be responding and taking accountability to be shown the door. There isn't enough of that happening. And so it's encouraging, for instance, to see that there is a review of the local government context. One, the local government municipal funding context, and I think that's an important signal. Hopefully something actually happens there. Then there's an opportunity for the public to comment. Recently, there was COCTA issued the discussion paper around local government, which has a deadline of 20th of June. And perhaps that's another opportunity for members of the public more broadly and other experts within the local government context to really feed into something potentially that could change the local government context.
Zukiswa, what about weeding out corruption? I mean, shouldn't that be in itself a big thing that would increase accountability, reduce the amount of malfeasance, which means that more gets put into the programs that ultimately would aid the entire province?
The anti-corruption architecture, certainly in this country, is in need of attention. And I think it has been said time and again that there is a need, for instance, to respond to many of the findings, such as of the State Capture Commission, the Zondo Commission findings, for instance, the National Advisory Committee, Anti-Advisory Council, for instance, has also issued particular advisories to the presidency, and we're yet to find out, we're yet to hear what has emanated from that. So there's been a slowness to respond. So in fact, one of the things that hopefully the president will make very clear quite soon is what is his response? What is the presidency's response, for instance, to the NACAC's recommendations, which of course are yet to be put in the public domain, as it were, given that they're an advisory to the presidency. But more than that, it is that there needs to be a very concrete way to fund many of these anti-corruption mechanisms. Over several years, at the provincial level, for instance, many have decried, ourselves included, that even at the departmental level, anti-corruption units are not adequately resourced or funded. And so it's all good and well to point out where instances of corruption are happening, to indicate that whistleblowers must come forward. But if there isn't protection for those whistleblowers, if there isn't adequate resourcing for those officers, and if there isn't a systemic way of reporting and dealing with corruption, even at the very root of it, then really more is lost than gained in this instance. And so one of the calls that we've made and we've indicated in a submission to Parliament has been very much for this push to ensure that all of these amazing plans are resourced and that there is adequate capacity to ensure that all of these interventions around corruption, whether it is resourcing the NPA properly, supporting forensic investigators meaningfully, having the right qualified people in each of those entities, anti-corruption units and entities and investigative capacities, all of that has to be resourced and politically supported is the other element.
I mean, one just looks at the Eastern Cape Premier Oscar Mabuyane himself, who had been under investigation last year, the NPA dropping that case in itself, then more allegations then being placed at Oscar Mabuyane as well then as another member then within the Eastern Cape for alleged money laundering in itself then. So you're quite right. So the funding of these law enforcement institutions becomes absolutely critical in trying to at least advance. And so does this bring me back then to that leadership quandary you spoke about a little bit earlier? Is it time to just be very decisive in moving forward? Because the more we delay these issues around leadership, the more we delay the advancement of provinces like the Eastern Cape.
Absolutely. There's no doubt about it. I mean, another area of reform has been around looking at the Public Service Commission, for instance. You mentioned the sort of highest leadership and, issues of corruption, instances of corruption being leveled against them as well, or allegations of corruption. So then the question becomes, if there isn't an ability to independently investigate and carry through such high-level investigations against high-ranking officials, then what is the point? So one of the areas is around, focusing on not just professionalizing the public service, but quite frankly also arming entities like the Public Service Commission to be autonomous as far as they can be, but also that they are able to independently fulfill their mandates, and as far as accountability within the public service is concerned. And so it is high time that reforms like that are given teeth, or entities like that are given teeth, but reforms are meaningfully pushed through. And I think that there is much that is being done in the public service context, many reforms, much legislation that's being bolstered, being put forward. Many organizations are also giving their feedback and input to do their best to ensure that those changes do happen. But I think where the most important elements is very much that even the best legislation cannot function in a system that is broken, in a system where there isn't accountability. So we again come back to this leadership question.
Yeah.
I think that there really is there is a crisis in many contexts, particularly not just at the local government, but there certainly is a governance and accountability crisis that I think we are perhaps not adequately addressing and taking quite lightly. Resourcing is important, but it isn't the be-all and end-all in a system, as I say, that quite often is broken and in crisis.
Zukiswa, it's very easy for us to lambaste here because we see so much wrong. Let's talk about the positives, if we will, as well. The potential of the Eastern Cape is absolutely vast. Do we have enough people who will be able to execute on trying to grow the Eastern Cape? Because as you speak about the ports, for example, other areas, whether it be wildlife, whether it be tourism, etc., we're still able to get the most out of that province then. Do we have enough people who are able to actually commit to that task and really see the fruits of the Eastern Cape come alive?
Arabile, there's no doubt that the Eastern Cape is definitely amongst the sort of most beautiful provinces, whether we speak of tourism or other areas. So the industrial context, for instance, isn't an area of research for us, so I can't speak with any authority in that regard. But there is no doubt, given the high levels of unemployment, that there simply isn't adequate work being done to ensure that, there is job creation in this context. Are there enough people? Undoubtedly. I think the question isn't people. The question isn't people who are willing to work. The question is not whether there is, young, creative, dynamic human beings that live here. The question is not whether or not we have innovation in this province. There certainly is. I think we see that every day, whether it be in the arts. This province is home to one of the largest, arts festivals in the world. And every year we see just how amazing some of the talent that comes right from the province and beyond is. So again, the question is really about harnessing that talent. We work with an organization in a coalition called the BJC Youth Capital, who very often do some amazing work around identifying opportunities for young people, but also the development of opportunities, meaningful work opportunities that aren't just about a job, but also about young people being able to grow. So there isn't a doubt that there are enough people, and in particular young people in this province who are unemployed, young graduates who are unemployed. And I think harnessing that as an amazing resource to tap into is certainly something that our provincial leadership is not doing enough of. So you're right, that certainly is one of the greatest resources, assets that this province has, is its people. And second to that is the beautiful nature and wildlife that we have in the Eastern Cape. I think tourism is something that's amazing, for sure.